Genius prisoners pulled off the perfect escape from the world's most impossible prison. The night was so black that even the snow seemed to vanish into the dark sky. The wind screamed across the Siberian wasteland, burying every footprint as fast as it appeared. And yet, through that storm, 9 desperate figures moved quickly, their breaths sharp and white in the air. Their hearts pounded louder than the dogs barking in the distance. The prison lights were far behind them now, and for the first time in years, these men were tasting the air of freedom. They had cut the power, ripped through the wires, and sprinted into the storm. No one had ever escaped this prison before. It was not just the prison walls that kept men trapped. It was Siberia itself. But that night, something impossible had just happened. They had broken free. Suddenly, the distant sound of guards shouting and dogs barking grew louder. The prisoners froze. They knew the dogs could smell them, storm or not. If the animals caught their scent, there would be no second chance. One of the men, Valka, pulled a knife from under his ragged coat. His eyes burned with a dangerous light. "We move," he hissed, "or we die here tonight." The others nodded, their faces pale and hollow, yet filled with an iron determination. They trudged deeper into the forest, the storm slicing at their skin, snow blinding their eyes. They had chosen the storm because it erased tracks, but it could also erase lives. Every step forward meant a step closer to freedom, or to death in the white nothingness. Hours passed. At last, the barking grew faint, swallowed by the screaming wind. The men stumbled into a frozen clearing, falling to their knees in exhaustion. They were safe, for now, but they all knew something terrifying. This was only the beginning. The prison had been left behind, but the true prison stretched out before them. Thousands of kilometers of ice, forest, desert, and mountains with no food, no shelter, and no mercy. How did these men end up here? And why were they willing to risk certain death for even the smallest chance of escape? To answer that, we must go back inside the prison, back to the day when hope was nothing more than a dream. The camp was a frozen hell, hidden deep in the Siberian wilderness. The Soviets had built it after the war, a place to bury their enemies and make them suffer. The guards didn't need tall walls or high towers. The snow was the wall. The ice was the fence. The miles of empty land were the chains. Among the thousands trapped here was a man named Janusz, a Polish army officer. He had once worn a proud uniform, but now he wore a thin, torn coat with numbers stitched across it. He had been accused of spying, accused of betraying his country, accused of working against the Soviets. None of it was true. He had resisted signing a false confession until they dragged in his wife, broken and trembling. She accused him in front of the officers, her words forced by torture. That day, Janusz's fate was sealed. 20 years. Hard labor. Siberia. The camp commandant had stood before the prisoners on Janusz's first day. "Don't think the fence is your prison," he said, his voice like ice. "This entire land is your cage. Step 1 foot outside, and the snow will kill you. And if the snow doesn't, the locals will. They get paid in rubles for every escaped prisoner they bring back, dead or alive." It was true. No one had ever escaped. The camp itself was poorly guarded. The Soviets didn't need strong gates. The land itself was the executioner. Life inside the camp was a slow death. The food was nothing but thin soup and stale bread. Men starved daily. Some froze in their sleep. Some went mad and wandered off into the snow, never to be seen again. But Janusz refused a break. His body weakened, but his mind grew sharper every day. He watched the guards. He memorized routines. He studied the land beyond the barbed wire. And most importantly, he began to notice others, men like him who carried a hidden fire in their eyes. One was Mr. Smith, a quiet, older man with the calm patience of someone who had already stared death in the face many times. Another was Cabero, a former actor who spoke of freedom like it was a stage role he was rehearsing for. And then there was Valka, a dangerous criminal, a thief and a killer, who laughed at suffering and kept a knife hidden even under the watchful eyes of the guards. Each of them had their own reasons for wanting freedom. For Janusz, it was simple. He wanted to live, not die forgotten in the snow. Days turned to weeks, weeks to months. Janusz tried to be kind, once offered his food to an old starving man. Mr. Smith had pulled him aside after. "There is no kindness here," he whispered. "If you feed one, the guards will punish you by cutting your ration in half. Kindness is death here." But kindness, Janusz thought, was the only thing that made him still feel human. It was Cabero who first whispered the word escape. He told Janusz there was a lake far to the south, and beyond it lay the Trans-Siberian Railway. Cross that, and they might reach Mongolia, and from there, freedom. It sounded like madness. The journey would take weeks, maybe months. They had no food, no maps, no help. But still, the seed was planted. Then came the snowstorm, the worst one in years. The winds roared so hard that the very earth shook. The guards retreated into their huts. The camp generator flickered. And that night, as the snow erased everything in sight, Janusz whispered the words, "Now!" 9 men followed him into the dark, risking everything. But escape was not freedom. The storm that saved them now became their enemy. Their bodies shook from cold. Their skin cracked and bled. By the time the sun returned, one man had already collapsed in the snow, his eyes glassy, his lips frozen into silence. They buried him with their bare hands in the ice. Janusz whispered, "A free man has died today," and the others bowed their heads. Food was gone within days. Hunger gnawed at their bellies. They dug through snow for roots, searched trees for bark, fought wolves for scraps of meat. Some nights they shivered without fire, too afraid the smoke would reveal their location. Yet they kept walking, always walking, south toward the lake, south toward hope, until one night, a terrible sound cut through the stillness. The growl of wolves. Dozens of glowing eyes appeared in the trees. The men huddled together, clutching sticks and knives. The pack circled closer, closer, and then the first wolf lunged. The first wolf lunged out of the darkness, its teeth flashing white in the moonlight. Valka was ready. With a roar, he slashed his knife upward, catching the wolf across its snout. The animal yelped and twisted back, blood splattering across the snow. But the others did not retreat. They closed in, circling tighter. The men pressed back to back, their eyes darting in every direction. The growls rose into a terrifying chorus. Hunger burned in the wolves' throats. Hunger burned in the prisoners' stomachs. It was a battle of 2 desperate packs. "Hold the line," Janusz shouted. His breath clouded in the air as he swung a broken branch at the nearest beast. Mr. Smith stumbled but recovered, swinging his own stick wildly. One wolf snapped at his arm, tearing cloth and flesh. He screamed but did not fall. Then, from the side, 3 wolves attacked together. One leapt straight at Cabero, knocking him into the snow. Its jaws snapped down toward his throat. Cabero screamed, clawing at its fur, but his strength was fading. Just as the jaws closed in, Valka plunged his knife deep into the wolf's neck. The animal twitched once, then went limp on top of Cabero. Blood steamed against the icy ground. The pack hesitated. For a moment, the glowing eyes blinked uncertain. Then, with angry howls, the wolves retreated, dragging their injured with them into the trees. The forest fell silent again, except for the sound of 9 men gasping for breath, their bodies shaking with fear and exhaustion. They had survived, but barely. When Cabero crawled out from under the dead wolf, his hands trembled. His face was pale as the snow. "They'll be back," he whispered. "When they smell weakness, they always return." Valka bent down and carved meat from the dead animal. His knife worked quickly, efficiently, as though he had done this before. "Then let's eat their brother before they come for us," he said coldly. The others stared. The idea was horrifying, but the hunger in their bellies was worse. They had eaten nothing for days. Soon the fire crackled with the smell of roasting wolf meat. The men chewed in silence, each bite both disgusting and life-saving. That night, no one slept deeply. Every rustle in the trees sounded like padded feet. Every gust of wind felt like the breath of another wolf. By dawn, they moved on again, their bodies sore, their nerves raw. The journey stretched endlessly. The snow never ended. The forest felt alive, watching them. Some days the cold was so sharp it cut into their bones. Some nights they slept huddled together, praying they would wake in the morning. Time lost meaning. They counted distance by footsteps, by blisters, by the sound of their stomachs growling. One morning, they found young Kazik, barely more than a boy, curled in the snow, his eyes open but lifeless. He had wandered in the night, blind in the darkness, and the cold had claimed him. They'd buried him with their hands. The ground frozen so hard it barely yielded. Janusz whispered again, "A free man has died today." Every loss made them fewer. Every step forward made them weaker. And yet none turned back. At last, after what felt like endless weeks, they reached the great frozen expanse of a lake, Bow Lake, just as Cabero had described. Hope flickered in their eyes for the first time. They had made it this far. Freedom felt close, but hope was dangerous. On the shore, they stumbled upon something they had not expected. A young woman. She appeared from the trees, her face pale, her hair tangled, her clothes torn by the wilderness. "My name is Irina," she whispered in broken Polish. "I escaped too. I've been hiding from the Russians. Please take me with you." The men exchanged glances. They barely had enough food for themselves. Another mouth would mean more suffering. "No," one of the older men said sharply. "She'll slow us down. She'll kill us all." But Janusz looked into her eyes and saw the same fire he felt burning in himself. She was starving, desperate, yet alive. He could not leave her. "She comes," he said firmly. The argument ended. Irina joined their group. That night, as they roasted a deer they had been lucky enough to trap, Irina sat close to the fire. Her hands shook as she ate, but her eyes never stopped searching the faces around her. Valka leaned in close to Janusz. "She's trouble," he muttered. "Mark my words. She'll bring death to us before the mountains do." But Janusz said nothing. He knew every choice carried death now. Whether they survived would depend not on luck, but on trust, and trust was already crumbling. The next days were torture. The men stumbled through snow and ice, their lips cracked, their eyes hollow. Some began to hallucinate, seeing cities in the distance, warm fires that did not exist. When they finally reached the Trans-Siberian Railway, they thought freedom was near, but the railway was guarded. Patrols walked its length. Police searched for escaped prisoners. They would have to cross at night. As darkness fell, they crawled on their bellies through the snow, their breaths shallow, their hands frozen. The sound of boots on wooden planks echoed above them. "Now," whispered Janusz. One by one, they scrambled across the tracks, their hearts pounding with each step. The stars above seemed to hold their breath. And then, suddenly, Valka stopped. He looked around at the dark forest and shook his head. "I'm not leaving Russia," he growled. "This is my land. I'll take my chances here." The others stared at him in shock. "If you stay, you die," Janusz whispered urgently. Valka smiled, his knife glinting in the starlight. Better to die a wolf than live as prey. With that, he vanished into the trees. The others had no time to argue. They pressed on, but their greatest disappointment came when they finally crossed into Mongolia. At the border, they saw the truth. Giant posters of Stalin, red banners fluttering in the wind. Mongolia, too, was under Soviet control. It was a crushing blow. Their journey had been for nothing. "We risked everything to get here," Cabero groaned, collapsing to his knees. "And for what? Another prison." For a long moment, silence hung over them. Then Janusz spoke, his voice steady but cold. "If not Mongolia, then India. Through Tibet, through the mountains. That is where freedom lies." The men stared at him as though he were insane. The Himalayas were thousands of kilometers away, guarded by deserts and storms. No one could survive such a journey. But Janusz's eyes burned with iron will. "Better to die walking toward freedom," he said, "than live crawling in chains." Slowly, one by one, the others nodded. The impossible became their only hope. The desert came first. The great Gobi spread out like an ocean of death. The sun burned them by day. The cold froze them by night. Their water ran out quickly. Their food was gone. They sucked moisture from their clothes. They chewed on dry roots and insects. One day, Mr. Smith spotted trees in the distance. "There's water there," he cried, stumbling toward the vision. Janusz shook his head. It's a mirage. Don't waste your strength. But Smith did not listen. He staggered on, and by some miracle, there was indeed a well hidden in the sand. The group drank deeply, saving themselves from certain death. Still, the desert took its toll. Irina collapsed, her body swollen, her face gray. She forced herself to rise again and again, not wanting to be a burden. But one day, she fell for the last time. The men gathered around her lifeless body. Even Valka would have bowed his head. Janusz closed her eyes gently. She wanted freedom, he whispered. Now she has it. The desert swallowed her like it had swallowed so many before. By the time they staggered into the foothills of the Himalayas, only a handful remained. Their bodies were broken, but their spirits clung to hope. Snow fell thick, covering their faces, their clothes, their tracks. The mountains loomed like giants, their white peaks vanishing into the clouds. At last, they reached a monastery hidden in the cliffs. The monks welcomed them, offering warm food, shelter, and rest. For the first time in months, they felt human again. But Janusz's heart was restless. He knew the storm could close the pass at any moment. He wanted to leave immediately, to push forward before it was too late. Wait, the monks urged. If you go now, you will face a storm. You may not survive. But Janusz shook his head. If we stay, the Soviets may find us. If we wait, freedom may slip away. Mr. Smith took his hand. If you leave now, you gamble with all our lives. Janusz looked at him, his face hard as stone. We are already gambling. Every breath is a gamble. But I refuse to stop walking. Not now. Not ever. That night, under the roar of the wind, Janusz packed his things. The others followed, unwilling to be left behind. They stepped out into the darkness, the snow biting their skin. The monastery lights faded behind them. Ahead, only the storm waited. And then, with a deafening roar, the mountains answered. An avalanche thundered down the slope, a wall of ice and snow crashing toward them. The prisoners froze, their eyes wide with terror. There was no time to run. The mountain itself was falling upon them.